Hello, you lovely listeners. I'm Amy. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast, where we will delve into the minds of the business people we have met in the process of launching our first card game. We will be uncovering their secrets to success, their biggest mistakes, and sharing the key lessons they have picked up en route. So, if you're looking for an engaging chinwag mixed with business insights and a good pinch of fun, you're in the right place. Let's have a really good conversation. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast. Today I am joined by Hannah Springham from Farmyard, a former award-winning Norwich-based restaurant turned frozen food fine dining delivery service that is redefining the frozen food experience. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm so just keen to hear all about the journey that you and your husband have been on over the last few years with your Farmyard restaurant turned fine dining delivery service. So can you firstly tell our listeners a bit of background to your restaurant and the world of Farmyard?
Yeah, of course. So my husband is our chef patron, and he'd always wanted to have his own restaurant. You know, it's a dream for a lot of chefs, and he'd been a head chef in London for years, working for kind of Michelin-starred chefs like Claude Bosey and Richard Corrigan. And we were moving back to Norfolk, which is where we were both brought up. And Norfolk's known for fabulous produce. It's where loads of farms are based. And he talked about the idea of a restaurant. And then he came up with the word farmyard. He was like, you know, it's celebrating the produce from the farms. I was like, God, that is so clever. That's brilliant. What a great word. And just really, I understood it. I'm a real kind of story person in my own trade and my own background as a TV producer. And so when I heard that, I was like, yes, that is it. And Farmyard was born, and it had a bright pink neon sign, and it was a bit of a juxtaposition as to what you might expect a restaurant called Farmyard to look like. There wasn't any kind of hay bales or dark green or, you know, all of that kind of tractor imagery. So we really like to kind of surprise people. But yeah, a Farmyard was born then.
Fantastic. And I do say I love your brand identity and such, really vibrant. And obviously everything's going well with the restaurant. You'd achieved awards. And at what point then did you sort of have to pivot that business?
Well, I mean, like everybody else, we locked down. I remember that morning of lockdown, we'd been waiting for Jay Rayner had visited us from The Guardian, and we were waiting for his review to come out. We'd check every, whatever the day was, Sunday, I guess. And we woke up that morning and it was in, and it was the morning of lockdown. We're like, can't believe Jay Rayner's finally done a great review and we're shut. It was a nightmare. People started, obviously, if you remember, doing restaurant takeaways. You had to go and pick it up from the restaurant. We live in the middle of Norfolk, so we're quite isolated here. We noticed lots of people were, you know, it was quite a long journey to go to a restaurant to pick food up. And we were homeschooling our two children. And so we were kind of being obviously dinner ladies. I was very lucky to have a Michelin-listed chef on tap. So I was freezing. I was getting him to batch cook the school dinners and freezing his food. And I just noticed when we were defrosting his amazing food, it was just as incredible as it was when it was fresh. And I was like, there's something in this, you know, maybe we should do a frozen offering where people can stock up and not have to come every Friday or Saturday and pick up. And now what's really funny is if any chefs are kind of high end related to that kind of Michelin world, they are classically really snooty about freezers. So there was a bit of a battle of minds, because I was like, as a story person, I was like, this is genius, and it's hilarious that you're all denying use of freezers. I know on a Saturday night in an amazing restaurant, do they bin their beautiful steak on a Saturday night when they're shut for 3 days after that? No, they freeze it and make a bourguignon, don't they? So I was like, this is brilliant. Let's do it. And we had a kind of creative back and forth, and I won. We launched this range, and some of those dishes are still on there now, and we started selling it from the restaurant, but we didn't know how popular it was going to be, and people started spending kind of £200 a go, and they were stocking up. And so yeah, essentially that's when Farmyard, the frozen side of Farmyard, was born, and we continued it outside of lockdown, and it's just got busier each year from then.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it really is, obviously, that whole COVID era, it was obviously such a tough and stressful time and so much uncertainty. But to hear some of these actual positive stories have come out of that period. And I said, looking at things a bit differently and being creative in that space is really, quite inspiring. And obviously, as you touched on, you and Andrew are a husband and wife duo, and you're both creatively minded. So how does that work in the broader business when you've got two creatives?
It's really funny. I think we generally work really well. Like 80-90% of the time we work really well together because we have very different skills, Andrew and I. However, there is that overlapping creative part where things can get heated. But I think for the greater good of the business, it's a positive. But in the moment, it feels quite stressful. But to give you an example, I was like, his best selling dish in the restaurant was our beef Wellington. Customers always loved it. And I was like, you've got to do a frozen beef Wellington. And he was like, no way, it cannot be done. And we had a creative argument, basically. And then I won again, and he developed this thing. And to be fair, though, he was right. It took a lot of research and development to get it right, because freezing a classic beef Wellington with cabbage would make the pastry go soggy. It would crack. It wasn't an easy thing to develop. And then the next row we had about the welly was, can we do one from frozen? No, we can't. Yes, we do now. And then, can we do a Wagyu one? What about an A5 Japanese Wagyu welly, please? No, we can't do that. And now we do. So, there is a lot of kind of when our jobs overlap, which is essentially the menu, when I'm coming from like what the customers want, he's coming from what he can create, there is always this creative back and forth pull between us, but it's always for the greater good. And I think as long as you're heading in the right direction with your partner, then it evens out, basically. And I make out like I always win. I don't, but there is definitely there are some differences creatively when we're battling on a certain dish. But it's always to come up with the end product that's the best it can be, which is good for the business.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I'm sort of chuckling to myself because I think Alex and I probably have a lot of the same conversations. And sometimes if I've got the idea, it might take him a little while to finally go, okay, fine. Yes, I think that is something that would be good to do. It's just like at the time we have to go through this back and forth debate to convince each other. And you touched on that there, because when I was looking through the website and preparing for this podcast, I was actually thinking about foods going frozen. And if all foods, to the novice chef, the novice just home cooker, we'd be perhaps thinking, oh, yeah, just bung that in the freezer. But obviously, there is then dishes and such that cannot really be frozen.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, look, there's brilliant things to come from frozen food, and less waste. Food waste is a huge thing. It's much better for the planet eating in this way. And, we're really turning the frozen food sector on its head, which is why we've won awards. We aren't using E-numbers. There are things that we're doing which haven't really been done before in the frozen sector. However, there are things that that don't work and we haven't nailed. Andrew did beautiful Eton mess. It was so lovely. But the meringue on top of this dish just kind of went soggy through the freezing process when it was touching something else that when it would defrost, was going to make it wet, essentially. And, we've done loads of things that haven't worked, and not everything is brilliant through the freezing process. We're yet to manage a really fantastic risotto. And there are frozen ranges at a different level to us that do sell frozen risotto, but we are yet to find one that we think is really spectacular. And I think, because we're doing frozen fine dining, it's very important to us that nothing launches within Farmyard unless it's of that level that we're really proud of. So we spend a lot of time and money doing development, and not everything makes it through, and that's okay.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting, because as I say, I'm just thinking, other people at home might make their own risotto and they're thinking, I'll just put that in the freezer, we'll have it for dinner, next week or in a couple of weeks. But when you're obviously, so passionate and at that higher expert level, what you're expecting to come out the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've pushed back on a lot, the risotto, but I've got to admit, annoyingly, Andrew is right. When you freeze risotto, and I'll do it at home and I don't do it anymore, it does go a bit claggy, is what he would say. It's like horrible, like gluey texture, whereas a fresh risotto doesn't taste like that. A really good one.
Yeah.
And finding that taste, some things just don't transfer when they're frozen, and we won't touch things that don't really.
Yeah, gosh. And how does both yourself and Andrew feel about ultimately when obviously a customer purchases your product, it sort of is left into the hands again of that at-home novice who you just sort of hope is going to cook it correctly or defrost it correctly to still ensure that they get the taste that you guys have created at the start point?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think that's why we didn't do the whole meal kit thing that everybody else seemed to do in lockdown, where the restaurant would put everything in little packages and hope for the best. We just thought that would really devalue the brand. And exactly, how can you make something look great? Whereas now our dishes are all zero prep. So we're not a meal kit at all. And the instructions are so clear that we get amazing feedback on the beef Wellington. And that's still our bestseller now. It's transferred from being our bestseller in the restaurant to the bestseller in the frozen range. But and you've got to cook it medium rare ideally, and he's given you instructions from frozen and from defrost, so it really is idiot proof. But what's come along in the last year or so, which is amazing, is obviously the birth of and growth of the people buying air fryers, and so our range, we get loads of feedback now, people loving using air fryers for our kind of crispy canapes, and we do an amazing crispy potato truffle terrine, and that's incredible in an air fryer. So that's really interesting to see as well. Obviously, for the desserts, you literally just defrost them. So he's created a gold bar. This has won 2 awards, this one, and it looks like a bar of gold on your plate. And we just recommend you serve it with a nice scoop of vanilla ice cream. So it's as idiot-proof as it can be while having restaurant quality at home.
Such a useful service for people who don't, you can't always perhaps eat out, or you don't want to always eat out, but actually getting either whether it's a special occasion or just having, a nice meal on a weekend without the additional travel and everything. Because it takes me back to the COVID eras when we were having whether it was the Zoom dinner parties with friends, we did a bit of that where we'd all tune in and we'd all have dinner together, or again doing when we did the quiz nights. But I think we all started to make sometimes more effort of what we could achieve at home as well, which I think it's great that you're bringing that to people, and potentially as well people who couldn't physically travel to where you are.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about lockdown that was brilliant, is people kind of fell back in love with dining at home as well. I think, the people's habits to dining out have certainly changed since lockdown, but dining at home and kind of appreciating artisan produce and having amazing things delivered to your doorstep. Loads of businesses in lockdown turned to that delivery model, and they're still doing it. So customers can get anything to their doorstep, which is amazing. And, we do starters, main, sides and desserts. So you can have a whole meal from a restaurant essentially in your kitchen. Yeah. But what's exciting is because we're frozen, we are on tap. We're in your freezer for whenever for up to 12 months, for whenever you want us. So there's definitely that kind of change of habit. And we do themed boxes as well. So if you can't be bothered to pick what to have, we do new parents club, the care package for people that have gone through something difficult. If you don't know what, people often think, oh God, sending flowers or wine, it's not quite enough. Whereas you could send a box of lovely food with no e-numbers, and you're basically giving them the gift of time. Because although people enjoy cooking, sometimes cooking feels, when you're going through something stressful, it feels like a lot. Or like, a date night, do you want your husband to come and cook you dinner that night? Or do you just want him to come and sit with you while something beautiful is in the oven? Actually, there's so many reasons why people might want a lovely food offering that's less expensive than going to a restaurant, and where you don't have to do any washing up.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sold, definitely. And I think the period we're in life, we do have a toddler. So, when bedtime goes, once he's in bed, unless we have prearranged, any sort of support, we're not going anywhere. At what point then did you decide to fully close the restaurant and focus fully on the frozen food dining experience?
So we carried on with the restaurant outside of lockdown, and we closed just early this year, 2024. And it's been a bit of a strange ride, I guess, because nobody could have predicted how the world would change after lockdown. And hospitality still finds itself in a difficult place. It's very hard to predict your trade these days. And I think, maybe the London and London commuter belt cities are slightly more protected. But I think if you're out further than that, it can be very different from how it was. The kind of midweek lunch trade has really died off. And you can't just survive on a Saturday. People still say to me, oh my God, Farmyard shut, we loved it. And we could never get in, you were so busy. And there's a difference between Saturday night, being busy and being busy enough to know what you're ordering in and how you staff up for that week. And, what's really interesting about our brand is we know we weren't doing anything wrong because people loved what we were doing. The reviews were still brilliant. But you have to make a decision, I think. And it was a really brave decision to make. It's a really odd thing to do. But actually, we had two businesses in front of us, two opportunities. And, when people are in just a different headspace at the moment with dining in the way that they were, do we carry on hoping that it's going to turn back around or turn into something new and positive in the next year or two? Or do we go, okay, let's hold that. We've done that for 7-8 years. People loved it. We were in the Michelin Guide, 3 rosettes. Jay Rayner's been brilliant. Now let's transform that and really concentrate. And I think somebody told me, I used to run a business with Peter Jones from Dragon's Den, and his right-hand man really was absolutely brilliant, Eric. And I remember him saying, there's so many things he said to me that always hang in my mind. And one of them was just concentrate on one thing, Hannah. I can be quite full of ideas. In my 20s, I was full of ideas and trying to, figure out where I was going to go with things. It was just do that one thing. Just throw everything into that one thing. Doing 2 businesses and you have 2 children, you cannot do everything brilliantly. Yeah. So it was a brave move, but definitely the right one for us at home and the business.
When you decided to transition away from the restaurant fully, what challenges have you experienced?
I mean, there's loads of challenges. I guess the big one, which is quite funny, and I do enjoy a challenge like this, is the kind of misconceptions and preconceptions of frozen food. Because, you've got Iceland, Kerry Katona, prawn ring advert in your head. You're thinking of the Viennettas of the 80s, the kind of Iceland shops full of these kind of mass-produced £1 meals. And you think, oh no, frozen food. I mean, it's so funny, like the generation above us, really, of kind of that absolutely negative portrayal of frozen food. And yet we all eat frozen peas and we know that they're more nutritious and that's the way to eat them. So I like turning that on its head, but the best way to do that is with tastings, because customers try our food and then go, oh my God. I had a man tasting our food on Friday night. I couldn't get rid of him. He was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. He was a real foodie. He was talking about, having some Michelin star stuff delivered to him in lockdown and this tasted better. But, once you get past that, you're away, basically. We've got an amazing statistic. 1 in 2 of our customers return to our website. They order again. And we haven't done any marketing yet. That's what we're about to do this year. So that's obviously brilliant. But yeah, so the preconceptions and misconceptions of frozen food is a funny one. And then the other thing that I guess is the next thing is figuring out how you can take a restaurant dish that can be made with tweezers in loads of time and making something that you can scale up and make more of in a batch without losing any of the quality. And so it's a really interesting thing, because people talk about manufacturing, people talk about restaurant, and we sit in this kind of hybrid that hasn't been done before. So we're constantly checking ourselves and making sure that we're doing things the right way. That means that we can make dishes that are affordable, but that taste phenomenal.
Wow. And that was a thought in my mind of, how you can plan the product.
I think the first year was challenging with that because you don't know what's going to be popular or not. Yeah. And so it was certainly at the beginning a challenge, because we were launching some vegan and we do vegetarian, but we were launching vegan dishes, and we just didn't have the customer uptake yet because we were so new. And ultimately your customers tell you what they want to buy. And once you know what the best sellers are, you get a gauge on your stock levels, basically. So we know when something's running down low, then we make another batch. So we're learning now, really, I guess, what our crowd pleasers are. So it's easier to judge, and we can roughly know what people are going to order. What throws the spanner in the works is when we do like an event, like we stock our desserts on private jets, which is amazing. And we've got an event with Em and Joe Malone in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, do we know how many people we're serving yet? So then we have to throw that in the mix, and then it gets a bit complicated. Or somebody will just order 20 beef wellies online, and you think, oh God, that's throwing that out. So, near Christmas, it goes mad because people just love the food that we do for Christmas. So yeah, that's harder to predict, but it gets easier as the years go by.
Wow, and it sounds like you've definitely got a few things going on beyond just the online service as well. As you just mentioned, they're doing some events and partnerships. What are the future ambitions for Farmyard Frozen?
So the ambition this year, to begin this year at least, and over the next 2-3, is to really push Farmyard into becoming a household name nationally. Mm-hmm. So we've got a great customer base and great knowledge about us in Norfolk, which is obviously where our home is. But it's about making sure that we are getting under the nose of people, kind of basically foodies all around the country. That kind of Waitrose shopper really should probably really know about us, and they will love us. But it's about being able to contact those people. So yeah, the big push is that. But we are also having conversations with a chef in Antigua, talking to distribution businesses about maybe serving people in Barbados in a kind of wholesale setting. So there is a conversation around export, but certainly at the moment the emphasis is really on that kind of growth in the UK in terms of knowledge and people knowing we're here.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for sharing behind the scenes and the journey that you guys have been on so far. And I'm now going to ask you some questions from one of our packs of cards, which is Really Good Conversations for Kids too. And actually, I was sort of with a lens of foodie. I sort of picked these questions with that in mind. So question number 1, what is the best kind of food for a food fight?
Brilliant. Oh God, something really like smushy, and I've got to say probably meatballs and spaghetti, because you want to get spaghetti in their hair and meatballs in their eye, ideally, you know, really, the meatballs that pack a punch, and then you've got that horrible like sticky tomato sauce all over their face. So yeah, I'd go Italian, I reckon, for a food fight. Maybe carbonara, bit of risotto. Oh, yeah, definitely Italian.
Yeah, definitely. The stuff that sticks and stains potentially as well.
Yeah, yes.
Question number 2. What is the best thing about the place where you live?
Oh, gosh, there's so much to say about the place we live. But if I'm being specific about the farm I live on, it's having space for animals. So we're mad animal lovers, and we're in Norfolk. So, of course, we have to lean into that. So in the room next to me, I've got 4 ducklings because I'm mad. We've got 2 sheep in the garden, loads of doves, got rabbits and chickens. So, yeah, we've really leaned into that kind of farmyard living, I suppose. So it's space to have animals and nature. It's absolutely all about that where we live.
Oh, lovely. Now, the question, though, is are those pets are they pets, or are they going to be making it onto the menu?
Everybody asks us that. Andrew although he's brilliant and he can do anything, if you take him, you know, a whole venison in the kitchen, he'll know exactly what to do. If he has to kill one of our animals, there's no way. He could not do that. He's a real softie. So, no, none of them get... And also, my daughter would never forgive us, so nobody makes it on the menu.
Oh, good. And question number 3. If you had to change your name to the last thing you ate, what would your new name be?
BLT. I like that. It's a bit like P. Diddy, isn't it? BLT. Yeah, big exactly. BLT.
So you can now just call yourself, whether it's just BLT straight up, or you could call yourself Hannah BLT.
Or BLT Springham. BLT Springham's quite funny.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Brilliant. Oh, fantastic. They're just a bit of fun questions to take us completely, you know, off-piste. But the finishing question I like to ask all our guests is, if you could ask any person, dead or alive, a question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Well, I feel like this might be resolved soon, but I would definitely nip myself onto the cast of Gavin and Stacey and ask Bryn what happened on the fishing trip. But they're going to do a special this year, so we're all going to find out, hopefully, although they threatened that last time and it didn't happen. But yeah, I really want to know what happened on the fishing trip from Gavin and Stacey.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully you'll find out.
Yeah.
Well, they might keep you hanging for yet another one. You know, it's how long can these programs drag it out for? Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been really lovely to chat and hear about your journey. Can you tell our listeners, you know, where can they find out more about Farmyard Frozen? How can they connect with you guys?
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. It's been really enjoyable. So Farmyard online is farmyardfrozen.com, and on Instagram, you can find us at farmyard_frozen. We are on Facebook and TikTok as well.
Brilliant. Well, I'll include all of those links as well for our listeners. And yeah, thank you again.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on today's guests. And if really good conversations are your thing, hit subscribe and join us next time for more business journeys, insights and banter.